Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Ukraine withdraws from anti-landmine convention as Germany pledges to invest in the country's defense sector. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Polish Prime Minister is considering reintroducing border controls with Germany. Anti-government demonstrators block roads in Serbia. And our reporter hopped on the new direct Adriatic Express train from Warsaw to Rijeka. Ukraine wants to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention banning the use of landmines. On one hand, minefields have proven to be an effective obstacle for Russian invaders. On the other hand, though, they pose a major risk to civilians even decades after an armed conflict. Our chief political correspondent, Aaron Damon, has this report.
Ukraine formally opting out of the Ottawa Convention and opening the door to the production and use of anti-personnel mines.
It's a hallmark of Russian killers, to destroy life by all means at their disposal, with chemical weapons, ballistic missiles and all kinds of mines, including anti-personnel ones. Unfortunately, this is how it is.
While the move still requires the green light from the country's parliament, it signals a clear intent, with the likes of Poland, Finland, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia having already withdrawn or indicating they will do so. Just last week, Warsaw voted to pull out of the treaty in the face of Russian military threats, as mines are expected to be integrated along the Baltic defence line and East Shield, fortifying the border.
Poland must not be subject to any constraints that would prevent us from defending our homeland.
But it's a decision with potentially long-lasting consequences. The 1997 Ottawa Convention was effectively a global effort to ban the use of anti-personnel mines, given they can make large areas uninhabitable for decades and cause damage that is almost impossible to predict.
Certainly when I speak with Ukrainian colleagues, they're talking about the immense toll that mining is taking in Ukraine and what sort of effort it will be to demine areas even after sort of the military conflict has boiled down.
On the flip side, Russia, along with the US and China, are not signatories to the treaty. In fact, Moscow reportedly has the world's largest stockpile, with an estimated 26 million mines, which it is using in Ukraine.
Mining should not be taken lightly, but it is something clearly that countries want to have in their arsenal as they look to that eastern neighbour.
On Monday, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul arrived in Kyiv to underline Berlin's support as the second biggest military backer after the United States. In May, Germany struck a deal to finance long-range weapons production on Ukrainian soil as it pushes for the war-torn country to manufacture more weapons faster.
This visit is important to me because Ukrainians are not only defending themselves, their own sovereignty and freedom, but Ukraine is also defending European freedom and European sovereignty against Russia.
Over in Washington, reports are emerging that a sanctions crackdown could finally be coming for the Kremlin. Legislation introduced by pro-Ukrainian Republican Lindsey Graham, which would slam a 500% tariff on imports from countries that purchase Russian energy, has been in limbo, despite having the backing of more than 80 senators. But Graham says US President Donald Trump reportedly told him last week that it's time to move the bill, likely in July, though there are suggestions it could be watered down. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has previously called for the heavy sanctions to be rolled out.
If President Trump finally recognizes that Vladimir Putin is playing cat and mouse with him and playing for time, it is possible to launch Senator Lindsey Graham's package, a very tough one.
And with a new poll out this week showing almost half of Poles fear another world war could erupt, the stakes are higher than ever. Aaron Darman, TVP World.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has cautioned Germany that he may reinstate border controls if there are any doubts surrounding migrants' return to Poland. He also went on to lambast a group of Polish citizens who started efforts to fend off what they believe is an influx of migrants from Germany.
These are actions that are supposed to show that Poland is being flooded with illegal migrants from the West. This is not true. There are cases that we are currently investigating in detail. We have communicated to the German side that if there are cases that are doubtful from our point of view, we will have to restore controls on the Polish-German border, and effective ones at that.
The Polish army is poised to get a boost to its capabilities. On Monday, the country's defense minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, signed 2 contracts for the purchase of defensive and medical equipment for the use of air and land forces. This included the purchase of Polish-produced medical Rosomak vehicles and new missiles from Korean-made Fa-50 fighter jets. Our defense correspondent, Zuzanna Jurek, has more.
Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz and the Secretary of State of the Polish Defense Ministry signed 2 contracts aimed at bolstering the defensive and medical capabilities of the Polish armed forces. The first of the contracts signed today relates to the purchase of 24 AIM-9L missiles, which will be compatible with the 12 Korean-produced Fa-50 fighter jets. These fighter jets have been used in the Polish armed forces since 2022 and previously have been criticized for their purchase, which lacked the combat capabilities, which is now being addressed with the purchase of the 24 missiles today. Speaking about the reasons driving this purchase, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz said it's a significant day for the Polish armed forces.
It's a major day for the Air Force as we are addressing the gaps left by our predecessors, namely the former Law and Justice government, by carrying out necessary repairs, arming the aircraft and training our pilots. We're now able to integrate them into patrol missions over Polish airspace, much faster than we had anticipated even half a year ago.
Additionally, the second contract signed today relates to the purchase of medical Rosomak vehicles. These vehicles are domestically produced. The contract is worth approximately €1 billion and is to be finalized by 2028. These medical vehicles aim to provide first aid. Additionally, they are prepared to transport wounded soldiers from the combat situations to medical centers. Speaking about the reasons behind the contract today, Kosiniak-Kamysz once again underlined that this is another step of implementing the lessons learned from the theatre of war in Ukraine.
It's very important for us to comprehensively secure the armed forces. Ukraine has shown how the battlefield has changed, but also how medical assistance procedures have evolved. Combat medicine itself has transformed. When it comes to the battlefield and medical support on the front lines, what truly matters is the soldier, your comrade from the trenches, so to speak, and his skills. But for evacuation, vehicles like the KTO Rosomak APC and its medical variant, a dedicated medical evacuation vehicle, will prove to be extremely effective.
The 2 contracts signed today, however, are not the end for the modernization as well as bolstering of the defensive capabilities of the Polish armed forces. In the upcoming days, the defense minister has said that the Polish armament group is also expecting to get a boost. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Anti-government protests in Serbia continue, with demonstrators blocking the streets of major cities and clashing with the local police. Paweł Trzaskowski reports on whether President Vučić is willing to use force to calm the situation down, while the EU is surprisingly quiet about the recent events in Belgrade.
Anti-government protests intensified in Serbia on Monday, with blockades being put in several cities across the country. This wave of civil disobedience is a fallout of the demonstrations from the weekend that resulted in clashes with police and the arrests of protesters.
The police acted absolutely professionally with minimal use of force last night. Most of the trouble came from those hooligans and thugs wearing balaclavas and masks on their faces.
But according to the protest organizers, those thugs wearing balaclavas were inside people, inciting violence on the president's orders.
Well, as you know, President Vučić and the ruling party have for many years had ties with local hooligan groups of soccer clubs. And of course, these are not real fans of soccer clubs, but actually hooligan groups are semi-criminal or completely criminal that are utilized by the government and paid for by the government.
And this eruption of violence was atypical, as during the past 7 months of continuous protests in Serbia, sparked by the collapse of a railway canopy that killed 16 people, both the demonstrators and the police remained rather calm.
Police that have usually been slow to respond or reluctant to respond, on Saturday night they seem to have the command that they should push forward and clear the streets.
This might mark a turning point in the authorities' attitude to the protesters that accuse the government of state capture and corruption. After initial attempts to appease the demonstrators, it now seems that President Vučić is taking a hardline approach. Unsurprisingly, he has already received backing from the Kremlin.
We have no doubt that the current Serbian leadership will be able to restore order and calm in the republic in the near future.
But there is also a conspicuous lack of comment from the EU on the current developments in Serbia, a country that aims to join the bloc in the near future. A sign, perhaps, that Belgrade's balancing act between Russia and the West might still be working. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
A record-breaking investment deal, a pristine stretch of coastline and a country caught between fast money and European values. Montenegro, long considered the shining star of the EU accession process, now faces a backlash over a controversial agreement with a United Arab Emirates developer. Aisha Bachi reports from Ulcinj, where local voices are calling for transparency and asking who this deal is really for.
Montenegro, small, scenic and ambitious. With its Adriatic coastline and steady reform efforts, it's long been considered the EU's most promising candidate in the Western Balkans. But that status may now be at risk. At the center of the concern is a controversial €35 billion investment agreement with the United Arab Emirates. On June 10th, the Montenegrin parliament and Prime Minister ratified a tourism and real estate cooperation deal with the UAE for the second time.
In principle, it's always good when you have an interest of a reputable investor who would like to come to Montenegro, invest money and help our economy. What we don't like about this particular deal and what we've criticized in the parliament is the way it was carried out. So it was not transparent, it was not competitive.
The move came after President Jakov Milatović refused to sign the law, citing possible violations of national legislation. The agreement would allow the construction of a massive luxury resort along Velika Plaža, one of Europe's longest undeveloped beaches located in the coastal city of Ulcinj. The area is not only an important ecological zone, but it is also deeply tied to Ulcinj's cultural identity and community life, and many worry its futures could now be at risk.
If you want to invest 35 billion euro in one municipality in very short periods of time, that means it will be just a new town without our approval, and this is like a modern economical occupation, the intention of Prime Minister Donald. This kind of investment, as it is in this contract agreement, intergovernmental agreement, is very shadowed because it gives the investor a lot of rights, and the government instead is going to invest in infrastructure, in roads, and that's why we think that our European path is not in this way.
On the beach itself, locals worry that the project could reshape Ulcinj forever and not necessarily for the better.
Building the apartments for sale in this location, it's not
in our interest.
I've been coming here for many years and I like what I have here. I feel comfortable.
We are not like Dubai, like the city that has been built on sand and on a desert. I mean, we do really have experience. We do really have that cultural, natural, historical heritage.
The European Commission has raised concerns over the deal's lack of transparency, a key condition under EU's accession rules. Also, opposition lawmakers like Ivan Vukovic argue that the way the deal was introduced undermines the very principles Montenegro committed to as part of its EU integration process.
We thought of it as very problematic in the context of European integration because while we were talking about closing Chapter 5, which is public procurement, we're passing the law which pretty much suspends the public procurement law, which we in the opposition thought might send a very problematic signal to our European partners.
But not all officials share this view. The government's chief EU negotiator defends the agreement.
These agreements, of course, are seen by the government as the possibility of Montenegro to further strengthen its economy, to diversify its economy, to converge its economy towards the medium-level economy parameters of the European Union member states.
Despite the ratification of the tourism and real estate agreement between Montenegro and the UAE, many locals continue to hope that their concerns will be taken into account and that the project will not be implemented.
Because the real investors, we do believe that they come through the front door, introducing, the local community, the local government, and then going further to other steps.
TVP World contacted the UAE investor Ego Hills for a comment but has not received a response. As Montenegro works towards EU membership by 2028, this deal bears significant importance. It may showcase whether the country is ready to uphold democratic standards and ensure public trust, or whether fast-tracked investment will come at the expense of EU values. This report for TVP World by Aisha Abachi.
To the delight of train aficionados and enthusiasts of warm destinations, the Polish state rail operator has opened a direct train line from Warsaw to Croatia's Rijeka. The new connection will run the route 4 days a week until the end of August. Our reporter Sonia Gatabiszczan brings us more straight from the Adriatic Express.
Lunch in Warsaw, breakfast on the Adriatic. That is how the Polish infrastructure minister, Dariusz Klimczak, described the new train line connecting Poland and Croatia. The approximately 20-hour journey from the Polish capital to the Croatian coastal city of Rijeka is probably not for the faint of heart. Yet considering that most of the tickets for the first journeys have been sold out, there appears to be no shortage of interest.
I like going to Croatia, and when I found out that such a line will be introduced, I thought that was a great idea. You don't have to tire yourself by going by car.
Poles always travel to Croatia, so this means of transportation is very useful for sure.
But let's get a better sense of the journey as we make our way to Rijeka. The tickets for this train ride start at 193 Polish zloty, that is roughly €45 for a one-way ride. The journey from Warsaw to Rijeka through the Czech Republic, Austria and Slovenia covers 1,240 kilometers, making it one of the longest train routes across Europe. The train stops several times in each of the countries, including in smaller places. But with less than 1 hour left until we reach Rijeka, it is time to check in with the passengers and get the final verdict.
To be honest, I'm not feeling tired. I'm rather feeling excited, and I'm really happy that me and my wife, we took this journey.
The views, the atmosphere is just it's relaxing. I think it's the journey is part of the experience.
And that is the train ride. But what may be the end of one train ride can also mark the beginning of the vacation. Some passengers are choosing to travel further to their favorite spots in Croatia. But for the others, Rijeka also has plenty of things to offer.
Maybe it's not as famous as some other cities such as Split and Dubrovnik, but it has really a lot of industrial heritage. Rijeka was an industrial hotspot during the 19th century. It was the biggest port of Austro-Hungarian Empire. In regards to Polish visitors, they are in our top 10 visitors for the last 5 years, and this new train connecting Warsaw and Rijeka will definitely increase that number.
In 2024, over 1.2 million Polish tourists reportedly visited Croatia. This year, until the end of August, they will have the opportunity to come here with a new direct train line designed specifically for the summer season. From Rijeka, for TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabišćan.
As Ukraine withdraws from the Ottawa Convention banning the use of anti-personnel landmines, Germany's foreign minister arrives in Kiev to discuss joint arms manufacturing. Meanwhile, Russia has criticized the US for slow progress in peace negotiations with Ukraine. To talk about it and more, we're joined by Bogdan Nahailo, editor-in-chief of the Kiev Post. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
So, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul came to Kiev on Monday and, quote, he said, "We will continue to stand firmly by Ukraine's side so that it can continue to defend itself successfully with modern air defense and other weapons with humanitarian and economic aid." Now, we know that Ukraine is struggling almost every night to cope with swarms of drones and missiles attacking Ukrainian cities. Now, the question is, can Germany provide enough air defense to change the current situation?
Well, I don't think anybody's relying just on Germany. We're looking to all of Ukraine's partners. We're looking at the US and hoping that Trump will eventually see the error of his ways and will be persuaded by his, I hope, still partners to do the right thing. So, but Germany has really begun to assume a leading role along with France, Britain, Poland, others, and the concessions, if you want, the promise of aid was very substantial. I mean, 2 billion plus just for air defenses, and about, as I recall, about 9 billion altogether for defense in the current year. That's a lot of money from Germany that was rather reluctant under the previous chancellor to wade in and to play its role. And under the new chancellor, Germany is assuming a very prominent role, which is very heartening, I think, not only for Ukraine, it should be for Europe as a whole.
But to be precise here, Germany wants to produce these weapons in Ukraine, right? So that's the whole point of today's trip by Germany's former foreign minister to Kiev. Now, I'm wondering what's the reaction from the Kremlin?
Well, what do we expect from the Kremlin? They're going to say anything from "this is terrible," "this is going to disrupt any potential for any peace negotiations." There aren't any. I mean, the only thing that we're really getting out of so-called peace negotiations, given the hardline, intransigent position, all or nothing from Russia, is the POW swaps, which is substantial because many hundreds of soldiers and civilians who have been kept in captivity by the Russians for years. And you've seen the condition that they've emerged in. They remind us of Auschwitz and the Nazis. This is terrible. The human conditions that in which they've been kept in. So at least that's something. But what they're saying is, oh, this is terrible. And I'm sure they will also play, as they always do, to those who are prepared to listen. Oh, Germans are Nazis, they haven't learned anything. They are just also expansionists remaking themselves. It's a cheap shot that we can expect from them at any time. But of course, they're not happy. They're not happy at all, because I think they felt that under the previous chancellor, and especially under Merkel, they had Germany under control, more or less placated, just as they thought until recently that Trump was in their corner. But now he seems to be having second thoughts. So I would think that for Russia, it's a very difficult time. Their economy is being hard hit. They've not made the substantial progress on the front lines that they expected, even though they are putting the pressure up. And their attempts to pulverize the Ukrainian situation from the air and through terror to reduce the will to fight and encourage sentiments to make peace at any cost, that has also failed.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a Russian cheap shot. Well, Moscow is accusing the US of the slow progress of peace talks over Ukraine. Now, what's your take on that? And the question is whether it will resonate in Washington, and whether Donald Trump is willing to listen to such commands from the Kremlin.
Donald Trump is obviously annoyed. He wanted, to fix the squabbling children, as he calls it, Russia and Ukraine, in 24 hours, then in 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks. He's obviously frustrated. He's under pressure, not only from Europe and Canada and his allies, but internally, domestically. He's being made to look a fool. Others are accusing him of being a traitor, of selling out to the Russians. And I think that after this wave of intensified bombings that we've seen in Ukraine in the last 2 or 3 weeks, this has also forced his hand to reconsider his position and say, well, okay, Volodya Putin is my friend, but he's doing the wrong thing, as opposed to simply blaming Zelensky for not playing along with him, with Trump. So we're kind of at, I would say, at a crossroads right now. There is pressure, as we know, in the Senate, in the Congress, to pass a bill strengthening sanctions. It seems that Trump has gone some way.
But do you think it will really happen after Donald Trump has reached this trade agreement with China not that long ago?
He's reached a trade agreement with China. He's forced Canada to backtrack. He plays it always. Trump uses his trumpet. He threatens, he blackmails, but he also stands back. And as I've just said, he's under pressure from realities on the ground, Russian behavior, but internal pressure on him is also mounting, not only on Ukraine. I mean, that's not the preeminent issue for American society, but it's one of the key issues where people who voted for him, especially, are saying, hey, we didn't vote for this kind of behavior and this stance. So I think he's being forced to reconsider and to backtrack. And he's not really getting anything in return from Putin. Putin is not giving him any concessions, any kudos, anything, that will make him say, oh, he's reasonable. I mean, he's meeting me halfway. There's been nothing on the Russian side to suggest that they are any more conciliatory than the belligerent self that they've been all along.
Mm-hmm. Now, lastly, I'd like you to listen to the quote from Juraj Blanar, that's Slovakia's foreign minister, who stated yesterday, "Let us return to respect for international law and seek ways to communicate with the Russian Federation and perhaps even forgive everything that has happened." So now Slovakia wants to forgive Putin for attacking Ukraine. Now, how would you comment on that?
Well, it's not Slovakia, it's the leadership, the present leadership, just as in Hungary, Orban's leadership, as opposed to the entire Hungarian people. So, you know, they want something in return. They want the oil, the gas, particularly. They want to seem important. But they're a nuisance factor. Slovakia is a nuisance factor in the EU, as Hungary is. But, you know, they are very much a tiny tail that unfortunately is interfering with the dog, the EU, the free world, if you want, that is beginning to bark and maybe even might start biting.
Bogdan Mihailo, editor-in-chief of Kiev Post, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, as always.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.